Today we're going to make a classic Delia Smith recipe. It's a chocolate truffle torte and it is the easiest and tastiest dessert you could ever wish for. There's 4 or 5 ingredients, takes about 20 minutes to make. You can make it ahead of time, you can freeze it if you want to. It's literally is the perfect dessert. So let's see how we turn a few ingredients into this. So back in the 80s when Delia first showed us this dessert, the UK ran out of liquid glucose on the back of this. So I have a similar problem in the US that I can't get hold of it, so I make my own. All we need is 5 tablespoons of liquid glucose. You could use, I think they call it crackau, which is some type of corn syrup. But what I do is I just take 5 or 6 tablespoons of white sugar and 1 tablespoon of water. All you need to do now is gently heat that to dissolve the sugar and you've got liquid glucose. So you want to boil the sugar just for a couple of minutes until most of it has dissolved. As you can see in my case, it's not all dissolved, and you want to just pour that into a jar and allow it to cool. Next you need to prepare your 8 or 9 inch round cake tin and prepare it with a parchment paper lining in the bottom. So I mark mine out and then cut slightly on the inside of the mark, and there we go. That's it, that's your cake tin prepared. So now we're going to measure the chocolate out. 450 grams of chocolate. You can use dark chocolate or you can use milk chocolate, which is what I'm using because I don't like dark chocolate. Or you could even use white chocolate. I think that would work as well. But the recipe calls for dark chocolate, 450 grams or 16 ounces. Then we need some double cream. Heavy whipping cream or thick cream, and it's 570 millilitres, just over a pint, or 20 fluid ounces. And you want to leave that and allow that to rise in temperature. We don't need to put that back in the fridge. We want it at just less than room temperature. Now we're going to add 5 tablespoons of our liquor. You can add rum, which is what the recipe calls for. Whiskey or brandy would work well. If you don't want the alcohol in your dessert, it will not boil off because we're not boiling this, so there will be an alcohol taste. I would suggest you make some coffee, allow it to go cold, and use 5 tablespoons of cold coffee. Next we need 75 grams or 3 ounces of biscuit to make our biscuit base. I'm using a pecan shortbread. You could use digestive biscuits or hobnobs. The recipe calls for an amaretti biscuit, so it's up to you. Whichever biscuit you like, go ahead and weigh out 75 grams or 3 ounces. We want to break our biscuit base up, or our biscuits to make our base. You could put it into a food processor or a blender and do it that way. I think the easiest way is to put them into a Ziploc bag and take a rolling pin and carefully bash them until they're broken up into you don't want them to be into a powder. You want there still to be some crumb left, but you certainly don't want any big pieces. So take your time, 2 or 3 minutes, and you'll get your biscuits broken up to look something like this, like breadcrumbs, I would say, the size. So it's like a breadcrumb. And then gently pour those onto your prepared 8 or 9 inch tin. So we want to make sure that the biscuit goes on top of the parchment paper. Take your time, make sure it's all evenly distributed, and if you see any big lumps, give them a little bash with the rolling pin. Now the fun part, we're starting to make some chocolate torte. So into a heat-proof bowl you add your chocolate, your liquid, whether that's rum, brandy, whiskey, or your coffee, whichever. That's 5 tablespoons, and also 5 tablespoons of your sugar solution. So this is the sugar solution I made. You may buy some pre-bought liquid glucose or the Caro corn syrup, whichever is your choice. But that all goes into a heat-proof bowl. Needs to be a heat-proof bowl because we're going to put this over a pan of barely simmering water. You can see that water is not boiling, it's just about simmering. And that's what we're looking for. Do not put this over boiling water, especially if you're using dark chocolate. You will split the chocolate and it will not go back together. Once it's split, you have to throw it away. So put this over a pan of barely simmering water and start to stir it, moving that chocolate and liquid around. Eventually the chocolate will start to melt and you will end up with a smooth chocolate, not solution, but I would say like a chocolate sauce. I don't know, what do you call that? Melted chocolate, we'll call it melted chocolate. You end up with melted chocolate and it looks smooth and shiny like that. So turn the heat off and allow that to cool for 5 or 6 minutes. And now in another bowl, we take our cream, which should have risen in temperature slightly, and we whisk it. Now you can use an electric whisk if you want, but I think a hand whisk is better because we do not want to make this too thick. We want to whisk it until it starts to thicken. We don't want to be in a position where we're making peaks. And you see that, I would say, is just about perfect. You can still see the marks I'm making with the whisk, but it's not forming peaks. So now the real fun bit. A little bit at a time, we add our melted chocolate mixture to the slightly thickened cream. And you don't want to whisk this. You can use the spoon that you used to stir the chocolate mixture, and eventually that is going to come together and be really smooth like that. Go ahead and add the rest of it, and indeed you can use a spatula to make sure that you completely empty all of the chocolate from the bowl into the cream mixture. And it's actually important that you get all the chocolate out, because when it's the solidifying of the chocolate which is going to give the torte its texture. If you don't have enough chocolate in there, the torte won't set. And that's crucial, as you're about to see. So after 2 or 3 minutes of gentle mixing, you end up with a very smooth cream chocolate mixture, and all you've got to do now is to carefully pour that over your prepared biscuit base. Do this slowly. You don't want to move the biscuit base out of the way. You want to keep the biscuit on the bottom. And if you have too much to fit in your pan, don't throw it away. You can put any excess into a ramekin dish or an old jam jar or a cup or something, and put that in the fridge as well. It will set, and on its own it's the most delicious chocolate mousse you've ever tasted. So once you've got your chocolate mixture into your cake pan, cover it with cling film, or you can use tin foil if you wanted to do that. And that needs to go into the fridge for a minimum of 3 hours. I suggest you do it overnight. So this is a dessert you can prepare ahead of time. So if you are preparing a meal for guests, you can make this a day or two before you need it. You can even make it a day or two before and freeze it and get it out of the freezer. And so it really is a time saver if you're catering for a number of people. Next morning or next day when you're ready to serve it, you can take the chocolate truffle torte out of the fridge and carefully with a knife run it all the way around the edge of your cake tin. And I would say carefully because, one, you don't want to damage your truffle torte, but you also don't want to scratch the non-stick surface on your cake tin. Those things are not cheap, so we need to look after them. So when you've run the knife all the way around, comes the moment of truth. Has your truffle torte set, or are you going to end up with a chocolate splat on your work surface? So you want to turn it out onto a cake stand, or if you've not got a cake stand, a plate will be fine. And moment of truth, 3, 2, 1, da-da! There we go, look at that. So I hope I've made this look as easy as it is. Knowing me, I've made it look harder than it is. It's 5 ingredients. It literally takes 15 to 20 minutes to prepare, overnight in the fridge. Your guests or your family or even you are going to love this. Thank you, Delia. This is an amazing recipe, and in Delia we trust. She's the queen of desserts, so check out Delia Smith online for more recipes like this. Thank you. Please give us a thumbs up, leave me some comments, let me know how you get on.